Back in college, I used money to buy myself a girlfriend. As long as she stayed with me, I would help her pay off her family's gambling debts. This campus beauty from a poor family stayed humbly by my side for 3 years. I treated her like something I had bought, ordering her around without a single complaint from her. Until right before graduation, my family ran into trouble. After I broke up with her, I disappeared without a trace. But when we met again, she had already become a highly celebrated business rising star. Later, I became her male secretary. Her current fiancé provoked me. If you hadn't let go back then, the Su group would be yours now too. Su Wanru sat across from him and said coldly, "Don't mention him. He doesn't deserve it." I forced a bitter smile. I really don't deserve it. So in 1 month, I'm going to marry someone else. A while ago, I went back to my hometown for a blind date. After returning, I submitted my resignation. The HR staff handed me a resignation form. Without even looking up, she said, "As long as you get President Su to sign this, you can leave after another month." I took the form and hesitantly asked, "Does it really have to be signed by President Su?" Unfortunately, HR's answer crushed my final shred of hope. "Of course, you're President Su's secretary. The signature has to come from her. Is there a problem?" I could only shake my head and leave the HR office. Su Wanru's office was on the top floor. I took the elevator upstairs and hesitantly arrived outside her office. After the knock sounded, I pushed the door open and saw a man holding Su Wanru in his embrace, kissing her passionately. I froze for a moment, but quickly returned to normal. I walked up to her and respectfully said, "President Su, I have a document here that needs your signature." Startled, the two of them finally noticed me. Reluctantly, they separated. Only then did I finally see the man's face clearly. He was from the Song group. The young master, Song Jingnian. He held Su Wanru in his arms and lazily leaned back in the chair. "I flew more than 10 hours to come see you," he said. "I'm pretty tired. My legs are sore too," Su Wanru gently said. "Then I'll have someone massage them for you." Then, she coldly said to me, "Why are you still standing there? Hurry over and massage Jingnian's legs." Song Jingnian said, "I feel bad about this," but there wasn't the slightest trace of apology on his face. "Isn't this inappropriate?" I stood there without moving. I was Su Wanru's secretary, but massaging her lover's legs was not part of my job description. Seeing that I didn't budge, Su Wanru seemed to realize something. She let out a mocking laugh and casually pulled out a stack of cash from the drawer. She viciously threw it at my face. I turned my head to avoid it, but the paper still grazed my cheek, instantly leaving a bloody cut. The woman's disgusted voice rang out, "Is this enough? Don't you just love money?" My face burned with pain. I moved my lips, wanting to say something, but in the end, I gave up. I silently crouched down and gently massaged Song Jingnian's legs. I didn't know how long I had been massaging them before Song Jingnian finally smiled and pulled his legs back. "All right, Wanru, didn't you book a romantic French restaurant? It's time, let's go." The corners of Su Wanru's lips lifted, and she nodded. "Okay." She stood up and pulled him out of the office. Seeing that they were about to leave, I hurried after them with the resignation form in hand. "President Su, this document needs your signature." Su Wanru frowned and reached out to take a closer look. But Song Jingnian urged from the side, "Wanru, hurry up. I'm hungry." Su Wanru stopped overthinking it and signed her name on the document. Then she walked straight out of the office. I finally let out a sigh of relief. "Su Wanru, I can finally leave you." My phone suddenly rang. I answered it. Xia Xiao's voice came through, "Chun, the wedding preparations have already started. How much longer until you come back?" I looked at the resignation form in my hand and said, "The resignation process is done. I just need 1 more month." After getting her answer, she still didn't hang up. After hesitating for a long time, she softly asked, "Chun, will marrying me make you feel wronged? After all, your previous girlfriend was someone as important as Su Wanru. Everyone knows how much she loved you." Hearing those words, my heart suddenly tightened. 6 years ago, my girlfriend really was. Forget it. Back then, she hadn't made a name for herself yet. She lived with me in a tiny rental apartment, living the most ordinary life. She didn't have lots and lots of money, But she gave me lots and lots of love. She would always hold me and swear, saying that once she succeeded, she would marry me as soon as possible. But when she loved me the most, I cruelly broke up with her. I still remember how heavily it rained that night. I pried apart her fingers one by one as she held on to me, and coldly, heartlessly said, "Suwonru, staying with you means being trapped in this lousy rental apartment forever. I keep looking at the keyboard I like over and over again, but I can only give up on it. I've truly had enough of this kind of life. Please, just let me go." I directly got into the car that was taking me away. Through the rearview mirror, I could still see her chasing after the car, begging me not to leave. She kept saying over and over that she loved me, and asking me to wait for her a little longer. I sat in the luxury car with tears streaming down my face, but I never looked back because I had already been diagnosed with cancer. Our lives were already doomed from the start. The cost of cancer treatment would have crushed us completely. I didn't want to drag her down. Later, I went abroad. I worked while earning money for treatment, and only then did I finally survive. After returning to the country, I joined Boxing Group as a secretary, but I never expected the company to belong to Suwonru. That was when I learned that during the 4 years I was abroad, Suwonru had gone from a poor girl to a rising business elite. Without me, she really had become even better. But when we met again, the only things in her eyes when she looked at me were sarcasm and disgust. She hated me. After joining the company, I became Suwonru's secretary. My workspace was very close to hers. I knew she did it on purpose, because there, I could see the men entering her office, changing every 3 days. I would immediately be called over by her, and she humiliated me again and again. If I refused, she would act just like before, pulling out a stack of cash and throwing it in my face, then saying, "Is this enough? Don't you just want money?" But late at night, when she was dead drunk, she would cry while blocking my doorway, clutching tightly to me, and choking out the words, "Jiang Sheng, do you even have a heart?" I didn't know whether Suwonru was torturing me or torturing herself. At that moment, I thought that perhaps only after one of us truly settled down could this doomed relationship finally end. So some time ago, I returned to my hometown for blind dates. The woman I met was my high school classmate, Xia Xiao. We got along very well, and naturally became engaged. We agreed to get married 1 month later. From now on, I would let Suwonru go, and I hope she could let me go too. Coming back to my senses, I slowly spoke, "Xiao, marrying you isn't a sudden impulse, nor is it because I was forced into it. Ever since I broke up with Suwonru 6 years ago, I've already let her go. You don't need to worry about that. In the future, I'll live a good life with you." Xia Xiao's voice was gentle. "I'll prepare the wedding back home. You don't need to rush. Just come back after you finish things over there." I nodded and hung up the phone. Holding the resignation letter, I returned to my desk and began handing over my work. By the time I got home, it was already very late. I was exhausted in both body and mind. After washing up, I laid down on the bed. I had barely laid down when a phone call came in. I answered it, and Suwonru's voice came through. "Jingnian wants to eat the fermented rice dumplings from the south side of the city. Go buy some and deliver them to the hotel." Those words instantly drove away my drowsiness. The shop selling those fermented rice dumplings was very far from here. Even if I left immediately to buy them, it would still take nearly 4 hours to deliver them to the hotel afterward. But the call ended quickly, without even giving me a chance to refuse. Although my resignation had been approved, I was still Suwonru's secretary for this remaining month. I let out a sigh, and could only helplessly climb out of bed. I changed clothes and went to buy the rice dumplings. 4 hours later, when I arrived at the hotel Suwonru had specified, the fermented rice dumplings had already gone cold. Song Jingnian only touched the bowl, without even taking a bite, before disdainfully turning his head away. "It's cold already. It doesn't taste good anymore. Wonru, how about this? Have Jiang Shun buy me some red date cakes from the east side of the city." "What do you think?" Suwonru looked at me and ordered me to hurry and buy them. I had no room to refuse, and could only leave again in exhaustion. But when I brought back the red date cakes, Song Jingnian only took 1 bite, before immediately tossing them aside in disgust. "Forget it. Go buy takoyaki from the north side of the city instead. If that's not good either, buy rice cakes from the west side." After being sent back and forth several times, Song Jingnian was finally satisfied. Just as I was about to go home, Su Wanru stopped me. With a meaningful look, she said, "Go buy more than a dozen boxes of condoms." The moment those 3 words came out, my expression instantly froze. After a long pause, I stiffly replied, "The hotel already has some." Her voice was soft. "The hotel doesn't have the scent Jingnian likes." Su Wanru paused, then mockingly said, "You should know, the brand I usually use." My face turned pale, and I practically fled in panic. Fortunately, there was a supermarket not far from the hotel. I quickly picked them out and delivered them upstairs. But even after I brought them over, she still refused to let me leave. After being ordered around for so long outside, I was too exhausted to even stand properly, and I had no strength left to argue with them. I could only silently stand outside the door, listening to the intimate sounds from inside. In my dazed state, I suddenly remembered a long time ago, in that tiny rental apartment, when Su Wanru and I embraced and kissed, doing all the intimate things that couples do every night. My breath would fall against her skin, my movements clumsy yet teasing. She responded to my closeness and held me tightly in her arms. But all of that was in the past now. The person who could stay by her side now would never be me again. Ever since the day I joined the company, Su Wanru's boyfriends had changed one after another. None of them lasted more than 3 days. But Song Jingnian had already stayed by her side for a month. The two of them suited each other well. She probably wouldn't replace him, and I was about to marry someone else too. I hoped that from now on, we would both find happiness separately. I stood outside the door the entire night, and listened the entire night as well, just as I was becoming drowsy. The door was suddenly pulled open from inside. My mind instantly became clear again. I turned my head to look, and saw Song Jingnian holding Su Wanru in his arms. As they walked out of the room, both of them were wearing bathrobes, and kiss marks could still be seen through their loosely open collars. It was obvious how intense last night had been. Su Wanru stared straight at me. "You didn't leave for even a moment." I shook my head. No. After standing guard all night, I had already sorted out my emotions. There was nothing unusual visible on my face, but she still wasn't satisfied. Looking furious, she said, "Jiang Cheng, you really can endure a lot." My expression remained calm. Of course I can endure it. In the past, I really couldn't let go of anything, but now I'm about to get married, so I only see her as my boss. My superior's private life naturally has nothing to do with me. With a business-like expression, I said to her, "President Su, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first." After speaking, I prepared to leave, but Su Wanru's face darkened. She suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. "Did I say you could leave? Tonight is Jingnian's birthday. Go organize a grand birthday banquet for me." I hadn't slept all night, and now I was being assigned another exhausting task. Logically, I should have refused, but looking into her angry eyes, I only stayed silent for a moment before accepting the task. "Understood, President Su. Just endure for 29 more days, and all of this would finally end." The door slammed shut violently, making me jump in surprise. I didn't understand what she was angry about. I worked hard the entire day, before finally arranging the banquet. As soon as the banquet began, Su Wanru entered the dance floor arm in arm with Song Jingnian. The two shared the opening dance, whispering intimately while gracefully dancing across the floor. After the dance came the gift-giving segment. A luxurious 7-tier cake was wheeled in, and Su Wanru brought out her gift. It was a wristwatch. At first glance, it looked incredibly expensive. The moment it appeared, someone immediately exclaimed, "Isn't that Heart of the Ocean?" Someone bought it at auction for tens of millions not long ago. So it turns out President Su was the one who gave such an expensive gift. President Su must really love him this time. Did you see President Su and Mr. Song during the opening dance just now? The way she looked at him was so gentle and affectionate. I bet wedding bells are coming soon. As the guest buzzed with discussion, Su Wanru stood at the front holding Song Jingnian's hand. Her gentle voice rang out, "Today, here, I have another piece of good news to announce. Young Master Song Jingnian and I are getting engaged." The engagement announcement came suddenly, yet it was completely within the guest's expectations. I looked at Su Wanru and Song Jingnian. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I felt like she glanced in my direction. But only for a moment, before I pushed those thoughts out of my mind. I must have imagined it. She hated me deeply. Why would she look at me? I stopped thinking about it. A crowd surrounded Su Wanru and Song Jingnian. offering endless congratulations. More and more people came over to toast them. Just as Song Jingnian was about to take a glass, Su Wanru suddenly stopped his hand. Too much alcohol isn't good for you. Then she looked at me. Jiang Sheng, Jingnian can't drink much. You'll drink in his place. Looking at the alcohol pushed in front of me, I said nothing. I simply picked up the glass with a smile and drank it in one gulp. There were simply too many people coming to toast them. I drank dozens of glasses in total, and my entire stomach felt like it was burning. After drinking for more than an hour, the banquet finally came to an end. The crowd gradually dispersed. While my face had turned pale, I took out my phone, preparing to call a cab home, when my phone suddenly rang. It was a message from Xiao Xiao. I opened it and found several photos. Some were wedding dresses, while others were houses for our future home. Right afterward, her call came through. Chun. I picked out several wedding dresses. Which one do you think looks the best? And do you think we should buy this house as our marital home? I casually glanced through them a few times. The pain in my stomach made it impossible for me to choose seriously. I could only softly reply. The wedding dresses all look pretty good. You can choose whichever you like. The houses are all fine too. I don't have any objections. Just as my words fell, Su Wanru's gloomy voice sounded out. What? A marital home? I instinctively hung up the phone and hid it behind my back. After a long pause, I finally came up with an excuse. It's my cousin who's getting married. He was asking for my opinion. Fortunately, she didn't question me further. She merely raised an eyebrow, her voice still cold. Get in the car. I'll drive you back. Don't embarrass yourself here. I hurriedly refused. No need. But she firmly said, get in. I could only swallow the refusal at the tip of my tongue, and silently followed her into the car. Su Wanru and Song Jingnian were sitting in the back seat, so I could only sit in the passenger seat. The place I lived in was rather remote. The farther the car drove, the more desolate the surroundings became. Song Jingnian suddenly exclaimed, Wanru, I think I left my watch at the banquet hall. Will you go back with me to get it? Through the rearview mirror, my eyes met Su Wanru's in the back seat. As if burned. She immediately looked away and blurted out, okay. I'll go back with you to get it. Song Jingnian immediately smiled, but soon looked at me hesitantly. If you come back with me, then what about Secretary Jiang? He can't possibly come back with us too, right? A faint premonition rose in my heart about what her answer would be. And sure enough, I heard her say, get out here and take a taxi back yourself. I said nothing, only obediently nodding my head. After the car stopped by the roadside, I directly got out. The moment the car door closed, the car sped away. I coughed twice and waved away the dust in front of me. In such a desolate place, I could only walk back by myself. Heavy rain was pouring down again, and before I had even walked for half an hour, the pain in my stomach spread through my entire body once more. There wasn't a single person nearby, so I could only force myself to keep moving forward. But the pain grew more and more intense. I didn't make it very far before my vision went black, and I collapsed into the freezing rainwater, completely losing consciousness. When I woke up, I was inside a warm room. Beside me sat Su Wanrong with a dark expression. She threw a medical report at me. At such a young age, you've already ruined your stomach like this. Are you trying to say I abuse my employees? The moment she mentioned my stomach, my heart suddenly tightened. I hurriedly picked up the report and flipped through it. Only after confirming that my cancer wasn't mentioned did I finally let out a sigh of relief. Only then did I have the chance to look around, and I realized I was in Su Wanrong's house. I hurriedly asked, President Su, why am I at your house? Her face remained cold. Someone found you unconscious by the roadside. They called the number pinned at the top of your contacts and reached me. At this point, her voice paused, and there was a tremble in it. Jiang Sheng, I'm still your pinned contact. Hearing her icy tone, I thought she was questioning me in anger. So, right in front of her, I quickly removed the pin. Sorry, I forgot to change it. I thought that would satisfy her. But instead, her expression darkened even more. Su Wanru let out a cold laugh and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I didn't understand what I had done to anger her again. I got up and walked to the door. Just as I pushed it open and prepared to leave, a splash of water suddenly came flying straight at my face. Everything happened suddenly. I didn't have time to dodge, and in an instant, I was soaked from head to toe. After wiping the water off my face, I saw Song Jingnian looking at me apologetically. though his eyes were filled with smug satisfaction. I'm really sorry, Secretary Jiang. I was watering the flowers just now and didn't see you. Are you all right? Let me take you to change your clothes. As he spoke, he pulled me toward the bedroom. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. This room looked exactly like the marital home I had once imagined. Back when Su Wanru and I hadn't broken up yet. At that time, we were both still poor and couldn't afford a house, but her favorite thing to do was curl up in my arms, burying her head against my neck and shoulder. Chun, when we get married, we must have a really big house as our marital home. She had said those words too many times, so many that even after for years, I could still clearly remember how deeply affectionate she looked when she said them back then. Song Jingnian's voice interrupted my memories. Wanru said this is our marital home. Secretary Jiang, I've met plenty of people like you. You're just trying to marry into wealth, aren't you? I'm warning you. You'd better put away those little schemes of yours. I composed my expression and calmly said, I don't mean anything like that. Song Jingnian snorted coldly. Stop pretending. I know all about how you worshipped money and despised poverty back then. You left her because she was poor. Now that she has power and status, you come crawling back to her. Don't you think that's shameless? Every step she took to reach where she is today was stained with blood. If you know what's good for you, you should leave sooner. Stop disturbing her life. His words were harsh, but I didn't feel much from them. He was right. Back when she was at her lowest point, I chose to leave. Now she had become a rising business elite, so naturally I shouldn't disturb her anymore. That's why even after recovering from my illness, I never planned to get back together with her. Joining this company had only happened by accident. My voice was quiet. I will leave. I returned home alone. After resting for a day, I returned to my desk again. I had barely sat down when I received a message from Su Wanru. Bring me the contract on my desk. I need it for a meeting in 10 minutes. I replied with okay. Then got up and went to the president's office to get the contract. Just as I walked out of the office, I saw several secretaries from the executive office hurrying toward me anxiously. Jiangshun, there's a problem with the cafeteria food. Employees got food poisoning. We need to open the cold storage and take samples now. You have the key to the cold storage. Come with us. I originally wanted to deliver the documents first and then handle the cafeteria issue afterward, but they grabbed onto me and refused to let go, saying the employees were protesting and that it had to be handled immediately. I checked the time and figured there was still enough time, so I followed them to the cold storage. But the moment the door was opened, a force suddenly came from behind me. Someone shoved me hard inside. By the time I steadied myself, the door had already been locked from outside. The temperature inside the cold storage was extremely low, and at that moment, I was dressed lightly, completely unable to resist the cold. I couldn't stop trembling as I ran to the door and pounded hard against the metal surface. Panic filled my heart. What are you trying to do? Let me out. The soundproofing of the metal door wasn't very good. I could clearly hear the secretaries laughing outside. Mr. Song told us to teach you a lesson. You can stay in there and enjoy yourself. Don't worry, we won't actually freeze you to death. As their voices faded, I heard the sound of footsteps gradually moving farther away. I had nowhere to ask for help. I took out my phone, wanting to call for help. But after the screen lit up, the tiny words "no signal" instantly filled me with despair. The biting cold spread through my entire body. I could only curl up in the corner and hug myself tightly, trying to slow the loss of body heat that way. But it was completely useless. Eventually, even my trembling began to weaken. I didn't know how much time had passed when my vision started to become blurry. At last, the heavy door of the cold storage opened. I remained curled up where I was without moving, thinking it was just a hallucination before freezing to death. Until a frightened woman rushed in. Brother Zhao, the door is open. Why hasn't Jiang Cheng come out yet? Could something really have happened to him? The man called Brother Zhao panicked too. How would I know? Hurry up and check on him. Only then did someone come in and hurriedly carry me out. After returning to a warm environment, I finally felt some sensation returning to my body. Once they saw that I had reacted, that group of people scattered immediately, afraid I would catch them. I got up, not bothering to deal with those secretaries, and instead lowered my head to look at my phone. The 10 minutes Su Wanru had mentioned had already been exceeded by an hour and a half. Panic instantly filled me, without even recovering from the freezing cold. I forced myself to stand up, grabbed the documents, and headed toward the meeting room. When I hurriedly arrived at the meeting room, aside from Su Wanrong and Song Jingnian, who was smiling as if waiting for a show, the room was completely empty. The moment she saw me, Su Wanru picked up the coffee cup beside her and threw it at me. Her voice was full of fury. Jiang Chun, do you even know what time it is now? My body temperature still hadn't returned to normal, making my reactions sluggish. I could only watch helplessly as the coffee cup shattered at my feet. The flying shards sliced across my calf, leaving mottled streaks of blood. Enduring the pain, I forced myself to explain, sorry, President Su, I didn't do it on purpose. Mr. Song had people lock me inside the cold storage. They only just let me. But my instinctive explanation, to her ears, sounded like I was shirking responsibility. Su Wanru instantly flew into a rage. Jiangshun, do you think I believe that? Do you think Jingnian would be as vicious as you are? She grabbed the documents and slammed them hard against me. For a moment, I froze in a daze, forgetting to dodge the documents thrown at me. Right, in Su Wanru's heart, I was the most vicious person of all. I let out a bitter smile. I lowered my head and stopped explaining. Silently, I crouched down to pick up the documents. As silence filled the room, it was Song Jingnian who finally tried to smooth things over. Secretary Jiang hasn't been focused on work lately, and I happen to be preparing for the wedding these days. How about during this period? Secretary Jiang works under me for now. Su Wanru's anger had yet to fade, but when Song Jingnian brought it up himself, she didn't even spare me a glance before directly agreeing to it. From that day onward, I was transferred to work under Song Jingnian. He seemed especially fond of tormenting me. He made me peel chestnuts with my bare hands, until my fingertips were covered in blood before allowing me to stop. He made me strip the thorns off rose stems barehanded. That day, after finishing my work, I sat exhausted in a corner, silently counting down the days until I could leave. When I realized there were only 7 days left, I let out a sigh of relief. But the next second, Su Wanru's voice sounded out. What are you looking at? I turned around and saw her dark expression. I shook my head and only said 3 words. Nothing much. Su Wanru frowned, vaguely sensing that something was wrong. If she hadn't seen incorrectly, I had just been looking at a countdown. But counting down to what? Just as she was about to ask, Song Jingnian's voice rang out. Secretary Jiang, I'm trying on my wedding suit. Come help me. I glanced at Su Wanrong, and only after seeing she had no further instructions did I quickly walk over. Inside the fitting room, I lifted the curtain and walked in. Song Jingnian had already put on the shirt. Only the suit jacket remained, waiting for me to hand it to him. I quickly stepped forward, just about to raise my hand, but before I even touched him, he suddenly shouted, Jiang Cheng. What are you doing? I froze, only then noticing the bloodstain that had cut through the back of his shirt. Before I could even react, Su Wanru rushed in. The moment she saw the wound on Song Jingnian's back, her expression changed instantly. She immediately rushed to my side. What happened? Song Jingnian looked as if he were enduring pain. Wanru, don't blame Secretary Jiang. He didn't do it on purpose. It sounded like he was speaking up for me, but in reality, he was directly pinning the blame on me. Su Wanru looked at me coldly. Didn't do it on purpose? I think you did it intentionally. Jiangsheng, last time you falsely accused Jingnian, not only did he not argue with you about it, he was even worried you'd be punished. That's why I transferred you to work under him. And this is how you repay him? Get out and stand outside. You can come back in once you know what you did wrong. Every word pierced my heart. I knew that even if I explained, Su Wanru would never believe me. So I could only silently endure her anger. But I couldn't understand why Song Jingnian was doing all this. They were already about to get married, and I would be leaving very soon too. Even if Song Jingnian hadn't done these things, Su Wanru would still become his wife. There was already no possibility between us anymore. Heavy rain poured outside. Wearing only a thin shirt, I was quickly soaked through by the rain. Through the brightly lit window, I saw Su Wanru applying medicine to Song Jingnian's wound. After treating the injury, they picked out a movie and curled up together on the sofa to watch it. Then, carried away by the moment, they kissed each other. Under the pouring rain, I was soaked to the point of swaying unsteadily, until I could no longer stand and collapsed to the ground. Suddenly, Countless memories from the past flooded my mind. I remembered her saying, Maya-chun is the best Chun in the world. I remembered how, because she couldn't afford movie tickets, she could only sit with me on that tiny sofa, using an old lagging phone to play movies that had long gone out of date. I relied on those memories to survive every difficult night while working abroad to pay for my treatment. But now, those memories were buried deep beneath the pouring rain. From now on, I would neither dwell on them nor remember them. Let the past truly become the past. Because I had been caught in the rain, I developed a high fever the next day. Left with no choice, I took a few days off. During that time, I terminated the lease on my apartment and sorted out everything related to Suwonru, packing it all together and putting it online for sale. Because of Suwonru's fame, those items sold out almost immediately after being listed. Everything was gone in no time. After resting and recovering, I returned to the company. Today was my final day there. So I arrived dragging a suitcase with me. I was only waiting to finish the procedures before heading straight to the airport. As soon as I got to my desk, I handed over all of my work, employee badge, and access card. Once all the procedures were fully completed, I was just about to leave when I received a shopping list from Suwonru. Along with it came her command: buy everything on this list today and deliver it to the villa. I glanced over it briefly. There were many items on the list. Just as I was about to refuse, Xia Xiao's message popped up. Chun, are you coming back today? Do you want me to pick you up? I quickly replied, no need. I can manage on my own. How are the wedding preparations going? The moment the wedding was mentioned, Xia Xiao replied even faster. Everything's ready. We're just waiting for you to come back. I politely replied, you've worked hard. She answered again, it's nothing hard. It's what I should do. After a brief pause, she sent another solemn message, Chun, please take care of me for the rest of our lives. When Suwonru didn't receive a reply for a long time, she walked out of her office with a cold expression, intending to question me. But when she arrived at the secretary's area, she saw me holding my phone. She didn't know who I was chatting with. But when she walked closer, she saw a woman's profile picture. It felt as if a bottle of soda had exploded inside her chest. Bitterness, repression, and overwhelming emotion surged upward, so angry that she raised her voice. Jiang-chun, didn't I send you the shopping list? Didn't I tell you to buy everything today? Why are you still standing here chatting? I suddenly looked up. Only then, remembering that I had forgotten to reply to Suwonru, I wanted to explain to her that I had already resigned. President Su, you should leave these things to someone else. I've already. Before I could finish speaking, Suwonru's phone suddenly rang. Without even sparing me a glance, she answered the call and walked outside. Jingnian, I'm coming right now. She hurriedly left. Only then did the colleagues beside me lean over and whisper, Chun, what's going on? President Su didn't know you resigned. Then how did she sign the papers? I recalled what had happened that day and couldn't help but laugh at myself bitterly. Suwonru truly hadn't known I was resigning. When I handed her the resignation application, she was still preoccupied with accompanying Song Jingnian. She didn't even look at the document I handed over. Before signing it directly, I didn't answer, so my colleagues stopped asking. Instead, they brought up something else. Why did you suddenly decide to resign? I smiled and said, I'm going back home to get married. My hometown is too far away, so I won't be able to invite you to the wedding banquet. But I bought wedding candies, so please have some instead. I handed out the wedding candies I had prepared in advance. At the very end, there was still one pack left. I looked toward the president's office. It was completely empty. After thinking for a moment, I still pushed the door open and placed the final pack of wedding candies on her desk. Suwonru, from now on, may we neither meet nor think of each other again. After finishing all of that, I dragged my suitcase out of the company building and never looked back again. When Suwonru finished dealing with Song Jingnian's matters and returned to the company, I was already gone from my desk. She casually swept her gaze around. Seeing that everyone else looked completely normal, she assumed I had gone to complete the task she assigned me. She returned to her office. When she saw the wedding candy on the desk, she froze. Suddenly, she remembered that she seemed to have seen identical wedding candies on other employees' desks earlier. She frowned and walked straight to my workstation. Looking at the wedding candy on the female employee's desk beside mine, she asked, whose is this? Where's Jiang-chun? The woman looked confused. Brother Jiang gave these wedding candies to all of us. He's already resigned. He said he went back to his hometown to get married. That answer struck like a thunderclap, making her ears ring loudly. Resigned? Getting married? Impossible. Her face darkened as she returned to the office, picked up the phone, and called Human Resources. She still couldn't quite believe it. After the call connected, she immediately asked for confirmation once again. Jiang Sheng resigned. The HR department gave an affirmative answer. In disbelief, she asked, "He's my personal secretary. If he wants to resign, it requires my signature. How could I not know he was resigning and getting married?" The HR staff member also felt wronged. They had followed the procedures exactly. A secretary's resignation required the supervisor's signature, and Jiang Sheng had indeed brought over a resignation application bearing Su Wanru's signature. Only then had they processed the later procedures. All they could say was, "President Su, the resignation application Secretary Jiang brought over a month ago did have your signature on it." That single sentence left Su Wanru speechless. Her thoughts raced rapidly. Yet she still couldn't recall any memory of me approaching her seriously about resigning. But at that moment, she suddenly remembered something. A month ago, she had once shared a candlelit dinner with Song Jingnian. Before leaving, she had signed a document I handed over to her. So, Jiang Sheng had really left. Her gaze shifted back to the wedding candy, and her face turned pale. Jiang Sheng had gone back to marry someone else. No, she wouldn't allow it. How could I marry someone else without her permission? Overcome with anger, her breathing became rapid. She immediately ordered HR to find my hometown address. The HR department hurriedly searched through the files, trying to make up for their mistake. Very quickly, they found the information form I had filled out when I joined the company. They immediately photographed it and sent it to Su Wanru. After obtaining the detailed address of my hometown, Su Wanru immediately had someone buy the nearest ticket to City L. After arriving in City L, she transferred to trains and buses. After a long and exhausting journey, she finally arrived the next morning at the small town where my hometown was located. There were many elderly people in the town, and it wasn't some tourist destination. Outsiders rarely came here. So everyone immediately began gossiping when they saw Su Wanru. Wasn't little Jiang's wedding yesterday? Could this be a friend here to attend his wedding? Impossible. What kind of friend comes to a wedding only after the banquet is already over? The elderly townspeople chatted in their local dialect, which Su Wanru couldn't really understand. She could only vaguely make out that they had mentioned someone with the surname Jiang. She immediately connected it to me. Hurriedly stepping forward, she asked, "Excuse me, elders. Do you know where Jiang Sheng's house is?" The elders understood what Su Wanru said, but unfortunately Su Wanru couldn't understand their replies. After a burst of rapid chatter, they called over a little girl around 7 or 8 years old. The girl waved at her. "Big sister, I'll take you there." This sentence Su Wanru understood. She nodded her thanks to the elderly people and quickly followed after the little girl. The town wasn't very big, so Su Wanru didn't walk for very long with the little girl. Before arriving at my house, after bringing Su Wanru there, the little girl ran off. She stood alone in front of the courtyard gate. She wanted to knock on the door, but felt somewhat timid. She wanted to see me, yet just by looking at the decorations in the courtyard, she could already tell that a wedding celebration had just taken place here. The moment that thought surfaced, Su Wanru's eyes turned red. She had never imagined that one day I would marry someone else. Just as she was hesitating, the door suddenly opened a crack from the inside, revealing a fluffy little head. The child looked at her warily. "Who are you looking for? What are you doing standing at our door?" Fortunately, the child spoke Mandarin, so Su Wanru could understand. She quickly introduced herself. After hearing that she was my friend, the little one finally lowered her guard. She then turned around and called for Annie to come open the door. After hearing Su Wanru explain why she came, my mother shook her head. "You're here looking for a Chun? Yesterday was a Chun and Xiao's wedding. He's not here with us today. He should be at the new house." At that moment, she finally confirmed that I had truly gotten married. Even the smile on her face stiffened. She forced the corners of her lips upward. "Then could you take me to see him? I have some things I want to ask him." My mother waved her hand and pointed at Jiang Zhao. "There are still things to handle at home. I can't get away right now, so I won't go. I'll have Chow Chow take you there instead." Su Wanru nodded After saying goodbye to my parents, she left together with Jiang Chao. It was Jiang Chao's first time riding in a luxury car, so she curiously touched everything around her. Su Wanru didn't stop her. She even took the initiative to fasten her seatbelt. Following Jiang Chao's directions, the car finally stopped in the parking lot of the apartment complex where the new house was located. Su Wanru followed her upstairs and finally stopped outside the door. I had already received a call from my mother, saying Jiang Chao was bringing one of my friends to see me. I could only sigh at how carefree my mother was and waited at the door early. But confusion rose in my heart. One of my friends. I had gone to university in City S. Most of my friends were also in City S. Later, I followed Su Wanru to City Z to struggle and build a career. Plus, the years I spent abroad because of cancer. I had almost lost contact with all my friends. So who would travel thousands of miles to find me? Just as I was thinking about it, the doorbell rang. I hurriedly got up to open the door. The moment the door opened, Jiang Chao threw herself into my arms. Brother, I missed you so much. Hearing Jiang Chao's spoiled tone, I was a little speechless. We only met yesterday. What's there to miss? I remember the friend Mom had mentioned. I rubbed her head and asked, "Didn't Mom say an older sister came with you? Where is she?" Jiang Chao raised her head and pointed behind her. When I turned to look, I found no one at the doorway. Jiang Chao looked puzzled and stuck her head outside again, only to discover that Su Wanru was actually about to leave. She hurriedly shouted, "Sister Wanru, my brother's house is here. Where are you going? Come inside." Jiang Chao called for Su Wanru to come in. The moment I heard those words, my body suddenly stiffened for an instant. Su Wanru herself didn't know why. Before seeing me, her thoughts had been in complete chaos. Only one thought remained clear. She wanted to see me. She wanted to ask me clearly why I had suddenly resigned, why I had married someone else. But at the moment she was truly about to see me, it was as if she had suddenly woken up. What exactly was she doing? We had already broken up long ago. Whether the first resigned or not, whether I married someone else, what did any of it have to do with her? Just as she awkwardly tried to escape, Jiang Chao leaned her head out as well and saw her preparing to leave. When she looked up and saw me, she awkwardly raised her hand and greeted me. When she followed us into the house, Xia Xiao came out of the kitchen wearing casual home clothes. The gentle smile on her face froze for a moment when she saw the person behind me, but quickly returned to normal. She greeted everyone and invited them to sit down at the dining table. "We have guests. I only made a few homemade dishes. Just make do with them." She turned around and went back into the kitchen again. When she came back out, she carried several dishes and placed them on the table. Seeing that, I hurried over to help her. Ever since resigning and being around Su Wanru again, I had felt uncomfortable no matter what. But she shook her head, then quickly brought out the final dish. She skillfully teased me. "There are only a few dishes. Why would we need so many people helping? Husband, just sit there and wait to eat." Xia Xiao had never met Su Wanru before, but she knew that the person in front of her was the first love I had been unable to forget for years. She had deliberately called me husband in front of her. She wanted to tell Su Wanru that no matter how much we had experienced in the past, from this moment onward and for every future day, I would only ever be her husband. No one would ever take me away from her. Naturally, Su Wanru understood the provocation in her words, but what made her heart ache even more was that I did not refute the way she addressed me. Yet thinking about it, Su Wanru found herself somewhat ridiculous. We were now legally married. For Xia Xiao to call me husband was perfectly reasonable. What right did she have to feel heartbroken over it? No one spoke at the dining table, but anyone could tell that the atmosphere between us was tense. Even Jiang Chao sensed the strange tension between us. Her eyes darted back and forth among the three of us. I felt somewhat upset, but Xia Xiao gave me a hug and gently patted my back. Her voice remained gentle. "This has nothing to do with you. Chun, You can only control yourself, but you can't control where she wants to go. I trust you too. I know you'll handle all of this properly. Feeling her warm embrace and unconditional trust. My heart warmed. The elevator doors slowly closed. When I turned around, I saw Sue Wanru standing at the doorway. She looked at me with an unreadable expression. You've really decided to marry her? I glanced at her strangely and nodded without hesitation. I sat down on the sofa in the living room. Of course, we already held the wedding banquet and got our marriage certificate. You know, I've never been someone who makes decisions casually, whether it was breaking up for years ago or deciding to marry Xia Xiao for years later. My firm answer instantly read in her eyes. Sue Wanru's voice choked up. Then what about our past? I interrupted her. You said it yourself before. Those things are just the past. People always have to move forward, don't they? President Sue, your wedding date with Mr. Song is approaching. You shouldn't have come. My heartless reply was like a dull knife, cutting scar after scar into her heart, causing endless pain, and the cure she needed had long since been given to someone else. Suddenly, a phone ringtone sounded. It was Sue Wanru's phone lying in the living room, its screen lighting up. The words Jingnian appeared on the screen. I didn't get up. I simply pointed at her phone. It's Mr. Song calling. Aren't you going to answer? She didn't respond, so I didn't say anything else either, until the call automatically disconnected and the screen went dark again. She still stood motionless at the door. Then the phone rang again. It seemed that if Sue Wanru didn't answer, the caller would never stop. The people on both ends were equally stubborn. Neither of them would lower their heads so easily. The ringtone stopped and rang again and again. Sue Wanru frowned tightly. For the first time, she found Song Jingnian extremely annoying. In the end, she was the first to give in. She picked up the phone and answered the call. Song Jingnian's voice came through. Wanru, where are you? Why aren't you answering my calls? The day after tomorrow is our wedding. When are you coming back? Sue Wanru's imposing manner instantly collapsed. She opened her mouth but couldn't make a sound. All that remained in her heart was helplessness. And today's, it would be her wedding with Song Jingnian. Yet now she had come to find her ex-boyfriend, to ask why he was marrying someone else. What meaning did any of this have? Song Jingnian continued speaking. Wanru, are you listening to me? Sue Wanru was pulled back to reality. Looking at my expressionless face, her straight posture instantly slumped. In a hoarse voice, she said, I had to go on a business trip. I'll be back tomorrow. She casually made up an excuse and brushed Song Jingnian off. When she looked at me again, only sorrow remained in her eyes. Can I ask one last question? I hesitated for a moment, but in the end, I still nodded. After getting permission, she hesitantly asked, Why did you abandon me back then? Back then, the reason I gave was that she had no money, and I didn't want to be dragged down by her, so I chose to leave. At first, Sue Wanru believed it and was heartbroken. After that, she hated me too. That period was truly hard to endure, but she kept thinking that she would make it big someday, and she had to make me see how foolish my choice had been. That thought reached its peak when I suddenly reappeared after disappearing for years, and became her secretary. She thought I had seen that she became rich, so I wanted to cling to her. That's why she made things difficult for me again and again. She only wanted to confirm whether I still cared about her. But no matter how many boyfriends she changed, I always remained calm. It was as if everything related to her could no longer interest me. So she changed her approach again. In front of me, she revealed her desire to settle down. In front of everyone, she announced that she was getting engaged to Song Jingnian. But what Sue Wanru never expected was that I would suddenly resign and suddenly choose to marry someone else at this time. After a long silence, I looked at Sue Wanru. The hope in her eyes brought me back to that rainy night for years ago. After I told her we were breaking up, she had looked at me with the same hopeful gaze, asking if she had done something wrong, and begging me not to joke about breaking up. Back then, I cruelly pried apart the hand she used to hold on to me and resolutely embarked on the lonely journey abroad for treatment. And now, I still shook my head, without telling her the real answer. Sue Wanru, if before I decided to marry Xia Xiao, or for years later, On the day we first met again, you had asked me this question. I might have told you the answer. But now there's no need anymore. We both have our own new lives now. So there's no need to keep trapping ourselves in the past. I never expected Su Wanru to ask that question. But I think if, after recovering from cancer, after struggling to survive and reclaim my life, I had returned home and seen her, and she had asked me that question then, perhaps I really would have told her the answer. I would have told her, Wanru, I fought against illness overseas for 3 years. And now I can finally stand before you again. If at that time, she had still been willing to get back together with me, I would definitely have pulled her into my arms and said, Wanru, after 3 years, I've finally returned to your side again. Unfortunately, there are no ifs. We still ended up where we are today. Su Wanru didn't get the answer she wanted. But from my evasive response, her suspicions were basically confirmed. I hadn't left because she had no money. That wasn't the reason. Su Wanru's eyes turned red. She smiled bitterly, tears shimmering in her eyes. Before finally walking out dejectedly, I watched her back without trying to stop her. Not long after Su Wanru left, Xia Xiao returned to the new house with Jiang Zhao. Seeing that Su Wanru was already gone, she wasn't surprised at all. Instead, it was Jiang Zhao who couldn't find Su Wanru, and noisily started asking, did that big sister just now leave already? I didn't even get to say goodbye to her yet. Xia Xiao crouched down to meet her eyes and reached out to rub Jiang Chao's cheeks, making Jiang Chao struggle, her voice becoming muffled as she spoke. I could vaguely make out her saying, sister-in-law. What are you doing? Xia Xiao switched from rubbing to pinching, but still refused to let Jiang Chao go. In a dissatisfied tone, she said, is that person really that great? You still can't forget her? Watching the two of them mess around, I couldn't help but laugh too. But hearing Xia Xiao's last sentence, I awkwardly scratched the back of my head. She was clearly hinting at me, but after marrying her, I had already completely let go of Su Wanru. How could I still be unable to forget her? Seeing Jiang Chao cast a pleading look at me, I stepped forward and patted Xia Xiao on the shoulder as comfort. How is that not letting go? It was just saying goodbye. What, are you jealous? Xia Xiao awkwardly looked away, while Jiang Chao seized the chance to rescue her face from her hands and hide behind me. As she rubbed her cheeks, she nodded in strong agreement, not forgetting to chime in, exactly. Sister-in-law is such a jealous person. In the end, Xia Xiao raised both hands and surrendered to us. All right, I'm jealous. I can't win against the two of you alone. I surrender. The next day, Xia Xiao and I were going back home together, so I discussed it with my parents and let Jiang Chao stay one night at the new house, then go back with us the next day. My parents naturally had no objections. The one who objected became Xia Xiao, because when night came, Jiang Chao started making a fuss about sleeping with me. Brother won't come home as often in the future. I'll get to see him less and less. So, tonight I want to sleep with my brother. With a dark expression, Xia Xiao blocked her outside the master bedroom, refusing to let her step inside. No way, Chun is my husband now. It's perfectly natural for me to sleep with him. What kind of husband doesn't sleep with his wife? If you want to sleep with someone, go find your own husband. Jiang Chao froze for a moment, but quickly reacted. But I'm still little. I can't find a husband. I can only look for my brother. In the end, I was the one who stopped the farce. I first sent Jiang Chao to the guest room. When she clung to me and wanted to stay, I gently coaxed her, Zhao. You're already 12 years old this year. You can't sleep with your brother anymore. A 12-year-old girl is already a young lady. You need to understand the difference between men and women. And besides, when Zhao is at home, don't you sleep alone already? I understood how attached Jiang Chao was to me. I was 16 years older than her. When I went to S-City for college, she was only 2 years old. When she was little, our parents were busy working and had no time to take care of her, so I took on the responsibility of looking after her. When I did homework at home, she would sit beside me blowing bubbles. By the time I was in my senior year of high school, she had only just learned how to walk. when I graduated high school and left for college. She was still very young. When she realized she wouldn't see her brother for a long time, she cried her eyes out. So whenever I came home during breaks, she loved clinging to me and asking me to sleep beside her. Later, I followed Soo Wonru to Z City, and after that, I went abroad again. I hardly came home at all after that. This time, I had only just returned home and immediately got married again. Even though it wasn't far away. The place where I permanently lived had changed to here. She was just feeling insecure again. She had simply forgotten that she was already 12 years old. Jiang Xiao nodded reluctantly. Fine. She pouted so much that it looked like she could hang an oil bottle from her lips. I couldn't help laughing for a moment after leaving her a small nightlight. I finally got up and walked out. When I returned to the master bedroom, Xia Xiao had already finished washing up. She called me over and gave me a smile. Her figure was reflected all over my body. There were still droplets of water on her that hadn't been fully dried. They slid down along her fair neck and disappeared beneath the towel. It seemed her plan had succeeded perfectly. She had done it on purpose. Half an hour later, after finishing washing up, I opened the bathroom door. Xia Xiao was sitting on the bed. The moment I opened the door, she looked over. When she saw my still dripping black hair, she extended her slender hand and beckoned to me. Done washing up? Let me dry your hair for you. As she spoke, she skillfully picked up the hairdryer. She patted the spot beside her, as if she was fully prepared and only waiting for me to come over. I felt a little awkward, but I still moved toward her. In the end, I sat down beside her. She took a dry towel and gently pressed it against my hair. After drying some of the moisture, she finally switched on the hairdryer. Warm air blew out. Her fingers threaded through my hair, and the soft touch made my scalp tingle. And the woman holding the hairdryer, upon hearing my violently pounding heartbeat, couldn't help but chuckle softly. That laugh instantly made me embarrassed and annoyed. I snatched the hairdryer from her hand and sat off to the side, silently drying my hair by myself without looking at her, until it was completely dry. Xia Xiao looked at my back and quietly sighed. Meanwhile, by the time Soo Wonru returned, it was already noon the next day. She didn't contact Song Jingnian. Instead, she went straight back to the company. She had only been seated for a short while when Song Jingnian walked in. Wonru, you're back. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was still as gentle as ever. In the past, Soo Wonru hadn't felt anything about it, but this time, as he frowned, subconsciously she avoided Song Jingnian's approach. Song Jingnian also noticed her avoidance. A dark look flashed across his face. In the end, he pretended not to notice anything. Wonru, did something happen during this business trip? You don't seem very happy. Soo Wonru forced herself to suppress the discomfort in her heart and didn't avoid his closeness again. She shook her head. Nothing. I'm just a little tired. At that moment, she truly was exhausted. The weariness in her heart, combined with the overnight travel, left her utterly drained. The fatigue on her face was impossible to fake. Song Jingnian felt a little heartache as well. Then let's eat something first. Afterward, you can go rest for a while. Soo Wonru nodded. For once, she didn't refute him. She stood up and went downstairs with him. The Western food that had once felt ordinary now tasted as bland as chewing wax. After eating only a little, she set down her knife and fork. I'm full. I'll head upstairs first. You can go back by yourself later. She rubbed her brow, not even glancing at Song Jingnian's reaction, before turning and leaving the restaurant. But she didn't return to the company. After getting into the car, she sped off directly in another direction. This was the first time since Song Jingnian and Soo Wonru got together that he had been left alone at a restaurant by her. Shock filled his eyes. He didn't even care that he had barely eaten and hurried after her. But just as he was about to leave the restaurant, a waiter stopped him. Sir, you haven't paid the bill yet. Seeing the wary look on the waiter's face, Song Jingnian laughed in anger. He had never imagined that in this lifetime, he would ever be mistaken for someone trying to dine and dash. He pulled a card out of his bag and tossed it to the waiter. Go swipe it already. When the waiter returned the card, he took it back irritably. As he walked outside, all he could see was the car disappearing farther and farther away. Then, after looking at the direction, his expression suddenly froze. That wasn't the direction of MV Group, nor was it the direction of the Su family villa. If he remembered correctly, that way led to the shabby rental apartment where Su Wanru and I used to live together. Song Jingnian refused to give up. He liked Su Wanru. Even though countless men surrounded her, he still didn't want to let go. At worst, he would do just as he had done to me, and drive away every man around her. And now, even if she was reminiscing about me, so what? The man by her side could only ever be him. Su Wanru didn't know what Song Jingnian was thinking. She suddenly wanted to return to the past, to the shabby rental apartment where we once lived together. She took out the key hidden beneath the seat and walked to the door, looking at the rusty, dilapidated iron gate. She remained silent for a long time. In the end, she still unlocked it and pushed the door open to walk inside. The furnishings inside the room were exactly the same as before. After she became successful in her career, the first thing she did was buy this place. She kept everything exactly as it had been before I left. Back then, the rental apartment had pitifully little furniture and nothing valuable. A shabby little bed, a cheap wooden vanity table, 2 low-quality plastic stools that had faded over time, a storage box covered with a wooden board that became both our desk and dining table, and several small square mirrors pieced together to form our only full-length mirror. That was all we owned back then. The little bed was truly tiny, so small that back then we always had to hold each other tightly, so we wouldn't roll off the bed when turning over. Now she lived in a luxurious villa with a spacious and soft bed. But I, who had once endured hardship beside her, had now become someone else's partner. For years ago, I left her because I had no other choice, but she never realized it and failed to keep me by her side. For years later, she completely shattered my heart and personally pushed me towards someone else. This time, it seemed she truly could never get me back again. Su Wanru did not go back that night. She lay on that shabby little bed without a blanket, and the night air felt especially cold. She curled up and hugged herself tightly, yet the entire night was unbearably difficult. The next morning, she was awakened by a ringing phone. Still half asleep, she answered the call, and her assistant's anxious voice immediately came through. "President Su, the wedding is about to begin. Mr. Song has been urgently looking for you. Where are you right now? Do you need us to come pick you up?" Her muddled thoughts instantly cleared, and only then did she remember that today was her wedding with Song Jingnian. Perhaps because she had caught a chill the night before, she still felt groggy, and a faint ache had begun throbbing in her forehead again. Even her heavy breathing made the assistant realize something was wrong. The assistant asked worriedly, "President Su, are you all right?" Su Wanru paused for a moment before replying, "I'm fine. Don't come over. I'll head back myself later." Even through the phone, the assistant could tell Su Wanru was not in good condition. The assistant was still worried, but since Su Wanru refused to say where she was, there was no way to find her. Left with no choice, the assistant hung up. The assistant gave Song Jingnian an awkward smile. President Su said she'd be back later. "Mr. Song, how about you head to the hotel first?" At that moment, Song Jingnian was suppressing a surge of anger. He never would have imagined that Su Wanru, who had been cooperative the entire time before the wedding, would suddenly disappear on the actual wedding day. However, after hearing Su Wanru say that she would come back later, only then did his expression improve slightly. He nodded and prepared to leave. But when he reached the door, he suddenly turned to look at the assistant again, frightening the assistant so badly that her heart skipped a beat. Fortunately, he did not continue making things difficult for her. He only gave one instruction. "When Wanru comes back later, remember to call me and let me know." The assistant hurriedly nodded, seeing the wealthy young master out the door. In her heart, she kept praying, President Su, please come back soon." After Song Jingnian left MV Group, he went straight to the hotel. The wedding dress and suit had already been delivered there, and there was little time left. As soon as he arrived at the hotel, he went to change into his suit. A trace of unease suddenly rose in his heart. Because he had long since moved into Su Wanru's villa, He naturally knew that she had not gone home the night before, and the last place she had gone yesterday was the home she once shared with me. After hearing that I had returned home and gotten married, he hoped she had only wanted to go back for one last look and bid farewell to the past. Soon, there was only 1 minute left before the wedding began. Yet Song Jingnian still had not received a call from the assistant. He stood at the entrance, staring fixedly at his phone screen, terrified of missing a call from Su Wanru's assistant. But even when he finally stood on the wedding stage, his phone remained silent. The doors of the bride's entrance slowly opened, but there was no one there. The host awkwardly sent people to urge the bride, but they returned unsuccessful. The ominous feeling in his heart finally took root completely, turning him into a true laughingstock. Song Jingnian did not dare look at the crowd below the stage, but when he shifted his gaze, it met Father Song's eyes. Looking at his father's dark expression below the stage, his own face gradually turned pale. Another staff member returned shaking their head, saying they still could not find the bride. Immediately afterward, whispers erupted among the audience. What is going on? The bride didn't come? No way. Some time ago, President Su was publicly declaring her love for young Master Song, wasn't she? Who knows? In this circle, there are plenty of people who only care about temporary excitement. Look at the other main character today. Before she got together with the one on stage, wasn't she changing partners every few days? Who knows if what she felt before was just a passing whim? Now that the novelty has worn off, she regrets it. Amid the noisy discussions, Father Song suddenly stood up, walked onto the stage, grabbed Song Jingnian, and tried to leave directly. His actions were too abrupt. Not only were the people below the stage shocked into silence for a moment, even Song Jingnian stumbled from being pulled so suddenly. After taking a few steps with him, he finally reacted. He hurriedly pulled his hand out of Father Song's grasp. Father Song turned back in surprise, unable to understand what kind of scene he was making. But Song Jingnian only shook his head. A forced smile appeared on his face. Dad, Wanru isn't that kind of person. She must have been delayed by something. And she already told me today that she would come. Let's wait a little longer. His words carried no confidence at all. She had clearly made a phone call earlier. Even if she truly couldn't make it back in time, she would at least have called or sent a message to the wedding venue. A reply, instead of letting him stand there alone and be mocked by everyone. Seeing how stubborn he still was, still defending Su Wanru, Father Song suddenly felt furious at his disappointing son. Song Jingnian, I raised you all these years, not so you could grovel before a woman who clearly doesn't care about you at all. If she cared even a little, this wedding would never have turned into such a mess. At that moment, Father Song truly wanted to crack open his son's head and see what on earth he was thinking. You said she'd come back. Then where is she? But Song Jingnian kept shaking his head, repeating over and over, she said she'd come back. Seeing him like this, Father Song's heart completely sank. Are you really determined to stay here until every shred of your dignity is gone? Song Jingnian staggered back a step, his grievances impossible to voice. He had waited so long for the day he could marry Su Wanru. To make him leave just like this, he couldn't accept it. Dad, I'm sorry. The moment those words came out, Father Song instantly understood what he meant. Father Song shook his head. Song Jingnian, you'll regret this. After saying that, he stopped trying to persuade him and turned to leave alone, with the bride absent, and such an embarrassing scene having just unfolded. The guests no longer had any desire to stay. One by one, they left the banquet hall, leaving only Song Jingnian behind, still sitting there blankly, continuing to wait. He still refused to believe it. He refused to believe Su Wanru would abandon him like this. He had always thought she loved him, that she simply hadn't completely forgotten Jiancheng yet. After all, the love they once shared had been real. If she didn't love him, then what about all those times when she had been lost in passion beneath him, calling his name over and over, Jingnian? Even after the MC had advised him to leave, Song Jingnian stubbornly refused to go. Until little by little time passed, and the light of the setting sun streamed through the windows, making his figure appear lonely and pitiful. In the end, he finally stood up expressionlessly and walked outside. Song Jingmian didn't even change out of his clothes. He drove straight toward the place he once believed he would never step foot in again. Looking at the message he had just received on his phone, he confirmed the address and walked into the residential complex. The neighborhood was old and desolate. Song Jingmian, dressed in an expensive tailored suit, looked completely out of place there. He searched for a long time and was even nearly robbed by a group of thugs. His expensive, handmade leather shoes limited his running speed. Left with no choice, he could only take off his shoes and flee in panic. Those thugs probably thought that since Song Jingmian was dressed so exquisitely and luxuriously, everything he wore must be extremely valuable. They took out their phones to search the prices and were immediately stunned by the long string of zeros behind the numbers. Song Jingmian, wearing his scratch-up suit, ran desperately forward the entire way. By sheer accident, he actually spotted the building marked B2. Feeling like he had narrowly escaped disaster, he hurried inside. There was no elevator, so he could only take the stairs. Back then, in order to save money, Su Wanru and I had rented the top floor, which everyone else hated because it was freezing in winter and scorching in summer. Barefoot, he climbed all 7 flights of stairs. By the time he stopped in front of a door on the top floor, Song Jingmian was already panting heavily from exhaustion. He first reached out to push the door open, but when it wouldn't budge, he switched to knocking instead. The rusty iron door echoed with loud banging sounds, reverberating through the stairwell. Song Jingmian shivered unconsciously. The door remained unopened for a long while, so he knocked again. This time, the door finally opened. Inside the room was indeed Su Wanru, who had disappeared all day today. Su Wanru, her hair was messy from lack of care, and her tired eyes were bloodshot. When Su Wanru opened the door and saw that the person outside was Song Jingmian, she froze for a moment. "How did you find this place?" She seemed to completely ignore the torn suit Song Jingmian was wearing, ignore his reddened eyes, and failed to remember that the person before her was supposed to be the groom at her wedding today. The moment Song Jingmian saw Su Wanru, he could no longer hold back and roared hoarsely, his eyes red as he questioned her. "Su Wanru, why didn't you come to our wedding today? Why did you leave me there alone? Why did you humiliate me like that?" Faced with his relentless questioning, Su Wanru looked as though her mind had suddenly gone blank. She frowned, and only after a long pause did she react to what he was saying. "The wedding? Was today our wedding? Sorry, I think I forgot about it." Seeing her sluggish reaction, Song Jingmian finally realized that something about her condition seemed terribly wrong. He reached out and touched Su Wanru's forehead, only to discover that her temperature was frighteningly hot. He immediately panicked. "Wanru, you're sick. Why didn't you go to the hospital if you're sick? Why are you just staying here?" He grabbed Su Wanru and tried to pull her downstairs, but Su Wanru seemed glued to the spot, standing there without moving at all. "I'm not going. I want to stay here. I'm waiting here for Cheng to come back. Cheng will be back very soon." Song Jingmian froze on the spot. His eyes were filled with disbelief, unable to believe what he had just heard. So Su Wanru hadn't attended the wedding today, because she wanted to wait for Jiang Cheng here. Grabbing her shoulders, he shouted loudly, "Su Wanru, wake up already. Jiang Cheng abandoned you 4 years ago. No matter how long you wait here, it won't change the fact that he already doesn't want you anymore and has married someone else." As his emotions collapsed, Song Jingmian's voice rose uncontrollably, sounding especially sharp and piercing. It made Su Wanru frown tightly, and she subconsciously shoved him away. But she hadn't expected there to be stairs behind him. Caught completely off guard, Song Jingmian was pushed backward by her. Losing control, he tumbled straight down the stairs. Because of the shouting just now, the neighbors downstairs had all been disturbed. Originally, they had only planned to come up and scold the people yelling in the hallway, but they never expected that just as they reached the stair landing, they would see Song Jingmian rolling right toward them. They thought they had stumbled upon a murder scene, and their legs immediately gave out in fright. They collapsed directly onto the floor. Meanwhile upstairs, because Su Wanru was delirious. She didn't realize what had happened at all. She only knew that the person who had been bothering her vision nonstop had finally disappeared, without caring how he had disappeared. She simply turned around, went back inside, and shut the door. At the stair landing, Song Jingnian lay on the ground with his head hitting the floor. Fresh blood slowly spread from the back of his head. He already seemed completely unconscious. The neighbors shakily took out a phone and dialed the police. They wanted to run, but their legs were too weak. They couldn't even stand up. By the time the police arrived, half an hour had already passed. The neighbors had finally recovered enough to stumble downstairs in panic, but they happened to run right into the police officers coming upstairs. With the police there, the neighbor finally stopped panicking and hurriedly waved at them. "Officers, I was the one who called the police. They're upstairs." After the police went upstairs and saw Song Jingnian's miserable condition, they learned that the neighbor had only called the police and hadn't called an ambulance. They immediately called 120. Some officers stayed behind with Song Jingnian, while the others cautiously went upstairs. After pushing someone down the stairs, the suspect had actually dared to return to the room openly, without caring that there were eyewitnesses present. That was far too unusual, because the person who called the police said that after the suspect entered the room, she never came back out. When they arrived, they had specifically observed the surroundings of the building. The possibility of escaping directly through the window was extremely low, and there were no signs of any windows being opened. The most likely possibility was that the suspect was still inside the room. The officers first knocked on the door, but there was no response from inside. That only made the officers even more alert. After knocking again and still getting no response, they directly forced the lock open. When they pushed the door open, the room was tiny, with almost nowhere to hide. The police immediately saw Su Wanru lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. For a moment, they didn't know whether to laugh or be angry, but to avoid the possibility that the suspect was pretending, the officers still approached cautiously, pointing their guns at her. Just as they were about to wake her up, they discovered that her entire body was burning hot. She wasn't sleeping at all. She had clearly fainted from an untreated high fever. The doctors and nurses carrying the stretcher huffed and puffed as they climbed up the stairs. They lifted the unconscious Song Jingnian, and just as they were about to head downstairs, they saw several police officers supporting another unconscious woman downstairs. After realizing they had misjudged the situation and there were actually the patients, the police felt somewhat helpless. The police could only sigh helplessly. It was the first time they had ever encountered a case where both the victim and the suspect were unconscious. Both of their conditions were serious. One had been running a 40-degree fever for nearly 8 hours. The doctor said that even if she recovered, there was still a high possibility of brain cell damage. Under those circumstances, even if Su Wanru woke up, she would be unable to cooperate with the police investigation. The other had suffered a blow to the head, and whether he would wake up at all was still uncertain. When Father Song rushed to the hospital after receiving the news, he was filled with regret. He regretted leaving Song Jingnian alone that day. Even if he had been angry, he could at least have left someone behind with him, instead of letting him be bullied by others. After hearing that his son had been pushed down the stairs by Su Wanru, and recalling how she had fled from the wedding, Father Song was instantly consumed by rage. He immediately hired a lawyer and brought Su Wanru to court, vowing to send her to prison. When I saw this news report, I felt as though a lifetime had passed. In just 4 short years, my life had already gone through dramatic ups and downs. I had witnessed Su Wanru at her poorest and most miserable. So I naturally knew that she must have worked incredibly hard to reach her current position. But the news reports didn't reveal what exactly had caused things to escalate this far between them. They had been just 1 step away from getting married and starting a family together. Just the day before, I had still been seeing discussions online about Su Wanru and Song Jingnian's wedding. Yet by evening, the news had become about Su Wanru being taken to court. "Hubby, you're paying more attention to her than to me. Is she really that interesting to look at?" Xiao Xiao rested her chin on my shoulder. her warm breath brushing against my neck. She mercilessly snatched the phone from my hand. Her intimate posture made my heart race. I tried to push her away, but after struggling for a while, it was still useless. I just happened to scroll past it. Actually, Xia Xiao wasn't someone who got jealous easily. Most of the time, she could still stay rational. Except when it came to anything related to Su Wanru. Come to think of it, I really was curious when Su Wanru came chasing after me back then, considering how wary she was of her. How had she managed to feel at ease leaving us alone together? Curious, I asked her directly, but she only coughed awkwardly. Without answering my question, there was no way she could admit that she had been downstairs with Jiang Shao that day, completely distracted, and had almost tripped several times. She and Jiang Shao had already agreed never to mention such an embarrassing thing to me. So, how could she possibly answer? Since Xia Xiao didn't want to answer, I didn't continue pressing her. She simply took the opportunity to lie in my arms. During this period of time, under her initiative, I had almost become used to this way of getting along. It was intimate and warm, and it made me feel deeply content. Xia Xiao's fingers restlessly poked lightly at my chest. The touch made my whole body tremble. Subconsciously, I grabbed her hand. Even my voice became hoarse. What are you doing? Stop moving around. Xia Xiao lifted her head. All she could see was my Adam's apple bobbing up and down, and my clean-shaven chin. She blinked, her soft breaths brushing against me, making me tighten my arm around her slender waist. I endured it again and again, but in the end, I still couldn't help asking, Xia Xiao, why do you care so much about Su Wanru? I've already told you long ago that once I decided to marry you, I would stop thinking about her. She and I would only become strangers. The moment Xia Xiao heard that name, she immediately felt irritated. Even her voice sounded a little muffled as she said, but after all, she was the first person you ever loved. Hubby, I really regret not gathering my courage earlier to chase after your footsteps and tell you that I liked you. Hearing the meaning behind her words, I froze for a moment. Back when I met Xia Xiao on a blind date, I didn't hide anything from her. I was straightforward from the start, saying that I just wanted to find someone to marry as soon as possible. I didn't mind if there was no love before marriage. Whether we treated each other with mutual respect after marriage, or slowly developed feelings together, either was fine. In short, the reason I started this marriage was simply to end another relationship. If she ever fell for someone else, she could tell me directly. I would agree to a divorce and wouldn't cling to her. I only had one condition. No matter whether we developed feelings after marriage or not, she could never cheat during the marriage. Xia Xiao agreed. At the time, she only proposed one condition. She said that she would never cheat. But there had never been a divorce in the Xia family, so after marriage, I wasn't allowed to fall in love with anyone else either. Actually, this condition wasn't very fair, because no one could guarantee that they would never change in their lifetime. She could promise now that she would never cheat, but when that day truly came, no one could guarantee whether she would really fall for someone else. And by then, stubbornly forcing the marriage to continue wouldn't be a rational decision. But when I looked into her eyes, a strange thought suddenly arose in my heart. I thought that trusting her once wouldn't hurt. After all, if she really fell in love with someone else, then the person who would most want a divorce at that time would probably be her. So I agreed as well. From confirming the relationship to getting married, everything went very smoothly, and it truly proved her words. I wanted to find someone to marry as soon as possible. From blind date to marriage, it took only a short month. The timing was rushed. Yet the wedding she prepared didn't feel careless or rushed at all. Every detail showed the thoughtfulness of the person behind it. Back then, I thought Xia Xiao had also suffered emotional wounds. Maybe she had been abandoned, which was why she proposed the condition of never divorcing. I never thought otherwise. Even after marriage, with all her initiative and attentiveness, I thought she was simply following our original agreement to slowly build feelings together. But listening to her now, I realized that I might have misunderstood her intentions from the very beginning. Seeing the shock all over my face, Xia Xiao herself didn't know whether what she felt was helplessness or something else. I thought I'd already made it obvious enough, hubby. I've liked you for a very long time already. If we count from the year we met in high school, it's already been 13 years. A full 4,885 days. It's just that back then, I was too timid. Even until the year we graduated from high school, I never dared to take that step toward you. When I heard the number 4,885 days, I remembered the time when I was alone in a foreign country, working while receiving treatment. I had also counted the days one by one like this. Those days were unbearably hard. Sometimes, when I saw the number slowly approaching 1,000, then reaching 1,000, and finally surpassing 1,000 days, I would think maybe I should just give up. Whenever my illness flared up, I would lie on that cold, hard bed, writhing in unbearable pain. The long hours of work required me to replenish a huge amount of energy just to keep going. But because of stomach cancer, I could barely eat anything, even when I forced myself to swallow scraps of food just to survive. Most of the time, I would end up vomiting it all back out. Every time I looked at my pale face in the mirror, I would wonder, maybe this was simply the fate destined for me. Just over 1,000 days had already been so unbearable for me. So how had she endured her 4,885 days? I reached out and touched her brows and eyes, then wrapped my arms around her neck. I pressed a kiss against her lips. Were those years very painful for you? But it's okay now. I'm finally by your side. Xia Xiao froze for a moment. Then the corners of her lips curled into a huge smile. Yeah, thankfully, you're by my side now. So those past 4,885 days don't matter anymore. Because we'll still have many more sets of 4,885 days together in the future. She buried her head tightly against my chest, the happiness in her heart nearly overflowing. It was her former cowardice that had caused her to miss 13 years with me. This time, she would bravely embrace every future set of 13 years with me. In the end, the Song family's lawsuit against Su Wanru never successfully made it to court. The main reason was that after treatment from the doctors, it was confirmed that Su Wanru's prolonged high fever without medical attention had caused severe damage to her brain cells. The damage was irreversible. After waking up, she showed emotional and behavioral abnormalities. On top of that, without family to care for her afterward, there was a high chance she would be sent to a nursing facility. And when she committed the act that caused harm, she had not been mentally conscious. After mediation, the Song family chose to settle with compensation. However, Song Jingnian had suffered severe trauma to the back of his head. There was a very high chance he would become a vegetable. Whether he would ever wake up again was still uncertain. The day Su Wanru woke up, she looked at her phone and found not a single text message or missed call. She lowered her head bitterly and laughed at herself mockingly. She sighed at her own self-delusion. That's right, he's already married someone else now. How could he possibly care about news of me anymore? Even if he accidentally saw it, he would probably just smile and scroll past it. Because of Song Jingnian, she sold off most of the shares she held. To the Song family, she only kept enough shares to cover the expenses of the nursing facility. The Song family directly became the largest shareholder of MV Group. Fortunately, the person Father Song hated was only Su Wanru, aside from getting a new boss. There was no other real impact on the employees under the company. In the end, Song Jingnian never woke up. He became a complete vegetable. And on the very day MV Group's upper management changed hands, Su Wanru was sent to a nursing facility. When the outcome was announced, many people sighed in regret. No one had expected Su Wanru to end up with such a fate. It could only be called the cruelty of destiny. I hadn't seen this news at first. My understanding of everything was still stuck on the previous news about the Song family threatening to send Su Wanru to prison. It wasn't until I saw a message from an unfamiliar number that I finally learned that Xia Xiao had actually secretly blocked Su Wanru on my phone. She had also deleted every news article related to Su Wanru that popped up. I found it a little amusing. But when she blinked her eyes at me and acted cute while begging for forgiveness, I simply ruffled her soft hair. After that, I couldn't bear to argue with her anymore. Who could resist an adorable little bunny? The message from that unfamiliar number said. The message had been sent by Su Wanru. She said she wanted to see me one last time before entering the nursing facility. From then on, she would never disturb me again. In the end, I didn't refuse. After all, we had shared so many years together. Even though things ended badly, I still couldn't completely ignore her. I would feel a little guilty if I did. Besides, if we really traced everything back, I had been the one who hurt her first. That was what led to everything afterward. And it was only a meeting, after all, to soothe a certain little woman who loved getting jealous whenever Su Wanru was involved. I brought Xia Xiao along. When I went to see Su Wanru, by the time we arrived at the nursing facility, it was already the next day. The facility was located in the quiet outskirts, a place very suitable for recuperation, unlike the other patients wearing hospital gowns in the facility. When Su Wanru came to see me, she was still dressed in the sharp women's suit she used to wear most often as a CEO. The moment Xia Xiao, standing behind me, saw her outfit, she immediately spoke in a sarcastic tone. Since you're sick, you should focus on resting. Why bother with all this flashy nonsense? The sour jealousy in her voice was practically thick enough to materialize. I secretly found it amusing, but I also had to admit she was right. Since Su Wanru was using her illness as an excuse to see me one last time, why go through all this effort to keep up appearances? Su Wanru shook her head. She looked steadily at me and said, even if I'm sick, I still want to leave you with the best version of me. Even if we may never see each other again after this, I don't want you to see me looking ill. Ah-chun, wasn't that what you thought back then too? For a moment, her words stunned me. But soon, I smiled in relief. As expected of a business tycoon, even after stepping down, her channels for obtaining information were still far better than ordinary people like us. Even though I didn't know where she had learned about it, it had all become part of the past anyway. Now, even when it's brought up again, I can just smile it off. Su Wanru laughed self-mockingly. Ah-chun, I'm sorry I couldn't give you enough trust back then. And later, because of me, you suffered so much. Now, you can say I've finally received my punishment. When Xia Xiao heard that I had once been seriously ill too, she immediately became nervous. Instinctively, she wanted to ask more, but I stopped her and gently patted her hand reassuringly. Su Wanru felt both envy and bitterness in her heart. Not only had I never told her, I hadn't even told my current wife, but the person who could now stand by my side, whose emotions I paid attention to, and whom I comforted immediately, was no longer her. I looked at her coldly and said, what exactly did you call me here for today? Coming here to see her was already more than enough kindness from me. I didn't want to stay here too long. After hearing my urging, she pressed her lips together and suppressed the bitterness in her heart. Then she took out a bank card and handed it to me. Take this money. Consider it compensation for the injuries you suffered while working as my secretary. I looked at the card and paused for a moment, but in the end, I still accepted it. After all, the harm I suffered because of her had been very real. Accepting this money meant we were completely even from now on. I thanked her, then left together with Xia Xiao, watching our intertwined fingers as we walked away. Su Wanru couldn't help but think, if only she had trusted me a little more back then. If that had happened, the person standing beside me now should have been her. Meanwhile, after we had already walked far away, I was facing Xia Xiao's interrogation. She was extremely upset that Su Wanru had learned about my illness earlier than she had. That's all in the past now, and I've already recovered. Look, aren't I perfectly fine now? My explanation didn't comfort her at all. Instead, it made her even more depressed. In the end, she hugged me tightly, her voice carrying a trace of disappointment. Then, husband, let's make a promise. No matter what happens in the future, you're not allowed to hide anything from me anymore. I gently patted her back, my actions filled with comfort. In a soft voice, I replied, okay, no matter what happens in the future, we'll face it together. But we should also agree on one thing. You're not allowed to keep digging up my past anymore. Xia Xiao nodded repeatedly, okay? Whatever my husband says goes. I smiled at her. Let's go check how much money is in the card. Xia Xiao looked a little dissatisfied. What's there to check? Husband, I can make money too. My money may not be a lot, but it's more than enough to take care of our little family. I asked somewhat skeptically. Really? She nodded firmly. Really?